introductory remarks. I'll call the meeting to order. You can get started. I'll go ahead and make a few introductory remarks. I'm going to ramble, but I'll try not to ramble too long. I've been told that in any debate, the first person to use a Nazi analogy loses the argument. So this is about World War II, but it really is not a Nazi analogy. But I've been told, I don't know if this is true or not, I've been told that one of the advantages the United States military had in World War II is that the entire mindset of the military, the mindset of the people that were in the armed services, is that they were there to do their best and deal with the facts as they were. And that, yes, there are all these plans, and yes, you've got training, and we've given you the best information we have, but we all know when the battle starts, things are going to happen. And you're just supposed to do the best you can and improvise and get the job done. And I'm told that the mindset of the Germans was that everything was so controlled from headquarters that they were afraid to adapt. And that was a great advantage to the American forces. I suppose the greatest example of this, to the extent it's accurate, is during the invasion on D-Day, the Panzers sitting at Calais because the orders and the battle plans were for the Panzers to be at Calais, never mind that the invasion was actually at Normandy. So I have a tale of two vaccinators. One involves Access Health Services in Smithville, which is a community health center. They have a number of satellites. They're in Smithville, they're in Holka, they're in Nettleton, they're in Mantachie. They got some vaccine. A small amount, but they got some vaccine. And so I have talked to two people, unsolicited from me, that just went on at length about how they were handling the vaccine. They have a telephone number. You dial the telephone number. Someone answers the telephone and puts your name on a list and either gives you a time for an appointment or says, we'll call you when we get vaccine. And you go there, and it's a simple process. Meanwhile, we have Walgreens and CVS who were given vaccine early to get to the most critical people, the people in nursing homes and other institutions who are sitting there unable really to get out of their rooms because of the danger of COVID. They've got these national contracts. They're huge operation, Walgreens, huge corporate, CVS. But somehow, their whole proposition has come to a screeching halt because they keep saying they cannot find anybody in the state of Mississippi to give a vaccination. Oh yes, you'll give vaccinations, but you can't fit within Walgreens world or CVS world. And it's just two such extreme examples of what's going on. And all I can tell you is, if I had time to do it, I would have been tacky enough to look up the compensation of the big boys at Walgreens and CVS, and we could look at how much their annual compensation is and see if they're worried about people in nursing homes and personal care homes in Mississippi, or they're sitting up there computing how much their stock options are worth. Not that I'm bitter about all of it. But my understanding is almost every nursing home in Mississippi has finally got vaccinations. That's not true of personal care homes, but I continue to monitor this. In this whole operation, I have never personally criticized anybody because I think everybody's got their hands full. They're doing the best they can. It's an unprecedented thing. But there's simply no excuse for what Walgreens and CVS are doing. Now then, despite the agenda, Senator Johnson has a problem with his vehicle. And so you have Senate Bill 2755, which is Senator Johnson's vehicle. There is a continuing attempt to figure out how to assist small operations in getting access to to electronic health exchanges. And so I'll let Senator Johnson hold forth about this bill. I think that he's hoping to send it through the process so that we will have a vehicle available if the details get worked out. But Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do want to send it through the process, and as part of this, I'd like to add an amendment to add in a reverse repealer. But the intent of this legislation is that currently MSMA is working on a health information exchange, and so is the Hospital Association. The goal for the state is to get as many clinics and doctors on this health information exchange as possible so that we can have free exchange of health information throughout the state. The idea is that if there is a matching amount of money up to $1 million, the state will do a grant program for smaller clinics that will have trouble with the financial cost of converting their data to link up with the health information exchange. They expect that this is generally around $4,000 or $5,000 per clinic, and this would just be to help them with that, and it would only be available if there is a match by, say, MSMA or the clinic. So that's an explanation of the bill. I'm open for questions.
Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Johnson. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I do remember and I just looked this up, the previous term, Senator Kirby made me the subcommittee chair for this committee for repealers. And this Senate passed, out of this committee and out of the full Senate, Senate Bill 2427 in the 2019 regular session to simply extend the repealer for the Mississippi Health Information Network, which did all this stuff and which had been running and had been working fine. And we met with the chairman on the House side, and we were ready to extend this. This is all, and you can read it for yourself in section 41-119-1 and following, that we had this, and it was working fine, and we had a repealer, and it died on the House calendar in the 2019 session. And I thought I was just flabbergasted. Sort of by definition, the subcommittee that I was on at that time, chaired at that time, was sort of uncontroversial stuff that was working. And when that bill died on the House calendar, I just smelled a rat. And what I smelled, the opportunity to privatize something that was working fine so that somebody else could get paid to do it. And so obviously we need this service. And I'm glad to hear you're going to be offering a reverse repealer. But and at this time, Dr. Dobbs in 2019 was not yet director. Dr. Currier was director, but he was sort of the point person that I was dealing with this at the time. But we need to sit down with him, and we need to go back to the system that was built, I believe, after Katrina to deal with medical records. And we need to go back and look at what we were doing and whether it worked just fine, and we broke it so that we could pay somebody to come fix it. And that's, I don't know what's going on, but when that happened a little more than 3 years ago, I've been waiting for this I've been waiting for this ever since. So let's build this and let's get a system so that this work is accomplished. It's much needed. But let's go back to the model that we had, that as far as I know, people were generally happy with. And I'll dig up all my old notes about what we were doing, and we'll figure out a way to do it. But I just want to make you aware and the committee aware of a little bit of the history behind this program, so that when we come up with something, that we do it in the right way. So thank you for bringing the bill forward.
Thank you.
I just assume it's a computer upgrade program, which, like every computer upgrade program I've ever encountered, is substantially worse than the program it was upgrading. But, you know, that's me and Senator Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Johnson, do you know how many clinics you're talking about?
I don't know the total number. I'll get it for you. I don't know the number.
I would imagine it's going to be a substantial amount of money if you're looking at $5,000 for each facility. Just going to the hardware and stuff, and I'm kind of familiar with this. Each facility is going to require an HL7 interface, and they currently run about $7,000 to $8,000. So is this 5,000 going to just be part of covering that?
The way I understood it from the phone calls that I sat in on with the companies that would be doing that implementation at the local clinics, they did not talk about hardware. It was more of a software to link with their software. So to take whatever that clinic is using and link it to where the data would communicate with the programs they're using. That runs, the way I understood it, there were two cost drivers. The current system they were on, depending on how easy it was to convert that data, and also the number of documents or patients that build their client list. And so those were the two cost drivers, which would make it fluctuate. This was more intended, if you're, say, Hattiesburg Clinic, they have a much higher resource base than some other clinics may have. The goal of this is just to help the smaller clinics do it. It would go until the money ran out, but we would try to get as many on as possible.
Right, but I just want to let you know that there's got to be an interface between that clinic and to wherever this database is, and that's going to, generally, from my experience, it's going to be more than that $5,000.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
Well, again, my experience is that whatever you're doing involving computers, it always takes forever and costs far more money than you can imagine. And by the time it's done, you've got to do it all over again. I just am apoplectic. But Senator Blunt, being as Senator Johnson has this vehicle, maybe you can act as a policeman in hot pursuit of this vehicle and follow this car and see if it violates the law as it winds its way. I mean, seriously, I think Senator Johnson would be happy for you to collaborate with him.
Senator Brown, I'm happy to do that, work with Senator Johnson. I need to refresh my memory on all the details, but we'll dig all that up and we'll work together and do it.
And the intent.
If you do well, we'll try to get you a badge and a little siren and a bubblegum machine. We have the reverse repealer. All in favor of the reverse repealer, say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator Johnson moves title sufficient to pass committee substitute. Further debate? Ready to vote? All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. 2324 is the Board of Cosmetology, which has a repealer this year. This particular piece of legislation exempts certain matters from overview by the Board of Cosmetology. There's litigation involving the board, and it is thought that this legislation might actually assist in resolving that litigation. Among the things I did not campaign on was trying to deal with the world of cosmetology, but apparently it's before the legislature. So that's what the bill does. Okay? Senator Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm a lost as to what these exemptions, would this bill remove these categories of service from the State Board of Cosmetology?
Yes.
So there would be no regulating of these services by the Board of Cosmetology. And we're talking about hair braiding, hair arranging, eyelash work, the use of mechanical devices, clips, combs, crochet, hooks. That pretty much covers what the board does, doesn't it?
Well, I think it deals, the underlined language is still regulated by the board. So the language on line 49 and following are the, I mean, 51 and following are just the definition.
Of esthetician. So what services would be regulated if we pass this bill? What services would remain to be regulated by the board?
Hair cutting.
Okay, thank you.
Hair dyeing, hair bleaching.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Question, Mr. Chairman, do we know if these were recommendations made by the board, or did somebody just wake up one day and decide this was a good idea?
I think this is similar to a recommendation from the board, but I can't tell you it's the exact same thing.
So the board did recommend that these be eliminated?
There is a separate bill that's a recommendation from the board. If you'd like, we can wait and get that and look at it later on. It's fine with me to take this up Monday if you'd like more information about it.
And the reason I was asking if this was a recommendation of the board and is because I've received not hundreds, but I have now reached over 1,000 emails on this subject. And so I was curious, if the board had failed to communicate to their members, or if, like I said again, if this was just something that there was some good, valid reason why these should be exempted.
Well, I think to a very large extent, a consumer can make up his or her own mind about whether he or she does or does not want someone fiddling with his or her hair, or whatever amount of hair one has. And I have some personal question as to how much regulation we need about cosmetology in general.
That was my question. I was curious if this was something the board had suggested, or if they were in favor of removing, or if this was other means. So, I mean, based on the emails I received, you know, my interpretation was that they did not want any of these removed. The board was very much in favor of leaving them. So I just wanted some clarity if there was some comment, knowledge.
Believe, it does not hurt my feelings if someone wants to lay this on the table
So moved.
and we can get more information and take it up next week. That'd be fine.
I make that motion.
There's a motion to lay the bill on the table subject to call. Ready to vote on that? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Ayes have it. I think having this on the agenda and all will flesh out any information which we might need. There is on the House calendar a legislation dealing with a hospice repealer, so we'll skip over 2415 and go to 2419, which is to extend the current fees that the state medical examiner and pathologist receive. It's a 2-year extension. Questions?
Move title sufficient to pass.
Ready to vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The next bill that's before us deals with the Massage Therapy Act. The bill, as it is before you, deletes the repealer. Someone wants to move to have a 2-year repealer or whatever. I personally would not object to that. The board has, to some extent, in Section 5, reduced the hours of training to get more in line with what I understand to be the state, the national national practice. There's also a provision that I think for disciplinary purposes allows them to share material with their counterparts.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we put a 2-year repealer beginning on line 444 in the bill.
You ready to vote on the 2-year repealer? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Are there questions? Debate on the bill itself. You ready to vote? The motion is title sufficient, do pass. Committee sub. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 2554 concerns people, as I understand it, who are very sick and need frequent attention at a hospital, but are not technically eligible for hospice because their prognosis is not that they have a short lifespan. The problem is they're just in a situation where they're going to have problems from time to time and need readmittance to a hospital. What the bill would do would be to allow these individuals to essentially receive hospice services without having to meet the definition of a short lifespan.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
and this would have to, we would have to get a waiver for this from DHS.
I think that's,
Centers for Medicare and
I
Medicaid
think
Services.
that's accurate. I'm not sure I can find exactly where it is in the bill, but I think you're right about that.
99 to 105.
It's my understanding that this proposition, or this class of individuals, are already eligible under CMS guidelines, but they don't meet the other definition of hospice because of their life expectancy. I think the problem is with the definition in state law.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Parker.
So I guess my understanding of hospice, at least in the patients I encounter, is that once they move into the hospice program, the intent there is they stay on there until they pass away. You know, and it's designed to be set up, you know, for those people who are at the end of their life. I would just want to be sure on this, that in doing it, it seems in this situation, they would move into this care and then would move back. And I know in particular, if you see someone who is in a hospice program, the way you file for encounters and office visits and other things in that time requires different modifiers and different information than the person who is not in a hospice program. Senator Blackwell may be aware of this as well. And I would just want to be sure as this moves along, as I haven't thought about this until it came up in the committee, that we were not creating a secondary problem at the end of this care that might disqualify or change the care needs of that same patient at the end of the program. And that's a statement with a "wouldn't you agree" at the end of it.
I'm reminded of the teacher who responded to the question from a student by saying, you can write a report on that and deliver it to the class next week. But in all seriousness, I would appreciate it, and I think it would be well if you're willing to again, follow this along and try to get that resolved. In all seriousness, since you've raised the issue, if you'd be willing to do that, I think that'd be helpful. Senator Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've seen situations where folks were put in hospice, and later on, they got better, and they were moved out of hospice, and CMS's watchdogs would come down on the provider to the point where they had to pay back, you know, all the money that was used to provide hospice services for the person who got better. So it would seem to me that we'd have to get a waiver from CMS to implement this.
I don't think that's accurate. I think that the CMS, for the class of individuals this is directed to, currently would permit this service to be provided to them.
So there are palliative care provisions at CMS that would allow for this.
It's my understanding that CMMS would provide this, but the state law itself is more restrictive than the CMMS guidelines. That's what I've been told, and I believe that to be the case.
Thank you.
Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do I recall that we have a moratorium on hospice beds in the state? Do I recall that we have a moratorium on hospice beds in the state, and that number has not been adjusted for some time? Am I right about that?
You've already proven your memory's better than mine once in this meeting.
Well,
Your
it's
memory's
shaky
better
on
than
this
mine
subject.
again.
I'm not, that's not a rhetorical question I'm asking.
I don't know.
I just wonder if that's the case, and if that is the case, what impact this might have on that, and whether, I've never frankly understood that, and I just didn't know if it was a good idea to if that is correct, do we need to reevaluate it, and do we need to reevaluate it in the context of this bill? So that's my only question.
Senator Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually think we had some discussion on this last session, but the rules for hospice have kind of changed. It used to be terminally ill with less than 6 months left to live, but services now have been expanded to folks more in this palliative nature who may be on hospice longer than that six-month period. So just want to bring that to the chair's attention.
But I think the definition, the problem is the definition under state law. I think it's the state law definition that requires patients to be terminally ill. And the thrust of this bill is to change the definition in state law so that state law would not be more restrictive than the CMMS guidelines. That's my understanding. The one thing I'm sure about in this committee is no matter what we do, there are a lot of implications that I don't understand about every single thing, including cosmetology. Senator Parker moves title sufficient do pass. Is there further debate? Ready to vote? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The last two bills are recommendations from the Department of Human Services. Mr. Anderson, would you come explain those two bills to us, please?
Mr. Chairman, the first bill is 2759, and that bill is a recommendation, a request that the legislature increase or allow the agency to increase, because it's written into the statute, allow us to increase the monthly benefit amount for TANF, the minimum monthly benefit amount, by $90 to $200 for the first member of a household. Now, we have not increased, right now that number is $110. And for a family of 3, the monthly benefit amount is $170. It has been $170 since 1999. So it's been some 22 years since we increased the TANF monthly amount. In real dollars, if you adjust that $170 for inflation, the $170 today is only worth about $145. Now, this is a modest increase. We have looked at our TANF funding that we have available, and this would result in about a $2.8 million commitment of TANF funds. This change would not require any state dollars whatsoever. All this is asking is that the legislature authorize the Department of Human Services to direct some additional funds away from the sub-grants and other supportive services that we have been providing and direct them to direct assistance for families. If you approve this increase, then the total monthly benefit amount for a family of 3 would go to $260, which would put us a little bit ahead of our neighboring states. Alabama, Tennessee, and other states are in the $230, $240 Well, Alabama's at $215, I'm going to correct myself. Arkansas is at $204 a month for a family of 3. Louisiana's at $240. Tennessee, I believe, is at $280 at this point. $277 for Tennessee. The reason we're asking for this year, we're in the midst of this pandemic. We're coming out of this pandemic, as you know. We think this is an opportune time for us to provide this additional assistance to our TANF families. We only have about 25 to 3,000 families right now who are receiving TANF benefits. We are looking at some other issues regarding the eligibility population, but what we're asking with this bill, what we're asking the legislature to do is simply allow an increase in the monthly benefit amount for the benefit of those who are the poorest of the poor in our state. That's all that this bill seeks to do.
This bill is permissive, so what the statute does is it sets a cap, but it doesn't require the department to increase the benefit. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. It says that the amount shall not exceed $200 for the first member.
And regardless of whatever the statutory law says, it still has to fit within your appropriation bill, I assume.
That's correct.
So my question is there any reason we should not make this effective from and after passage? That doesn't mandate a thing in the world. You can't spend money you don't have. You can't spend money that's outside your appropriation bill, but it would give you some flexibility and maybe a couple of months earlier.
Mr. Chairman, I would absolutely love for this committee and for the Senate and the legislature to make this effective upon passage. The sooner we can make this change effective, the better. And we have the funds on hand to fund this change today.
Senator Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you taking my call earlier today. Did I understand you on this issue to say that you have within your existing budget $2.8 million of flexible money to make this program be possible for this year in what you presented in your budget?
Yes, we have TANF funds that carry over from year to year if they're not fully expended, and we have certainly we have significant funds, sufficient funds to cover this increase.
And as you know, I think most members of this committee are very sensitive to the TANF funds in light of some of the past history and the things that we've discussed and seen happen in the past. Can you give us an idea when you say you have sufficient funds? Do you have an amount that's greater than that, that's available, greater than the 2.8 million, or is this exactly 2.8 million that is available?
No, we have more than that. I don't have the exact number at my fingertips, Senator, but we have a pending RFP for some sub-grants, but even if those are fully funded, I don't know the exact number, but I would say we probably have $20 or $25 million in reserve. We usually carry over that amount because we never know, when there may be a hurricane or some other emergency where we want to consider emergency TANF benefits. We've never done that as a state, but we want to keep funds in reserve. So yes, we have more than the 2.8 on hand at this time.
Okay, and as you recall this morning, my reason for the call and what we discussed is another need, and I share your enthusiasm, as I think probably most people in this committee share, in getting more to the people with temporary need for assistance. I've also shared some of our food bank and food pantry needs in the state. And the specific question I had for you when I asked you was, is there any money at all within the DHS budget to provide any assistance for additional food needs in the state of Mississippi and what you proposed in your budget? And do you recall what your answer to me was on that question?
I believe I told you we were at our maximum for food funds at this point. And the reason that is, Senator, is TANF is not authorized for food assistance. There are 4 tenets, there are 4 principles for which TANF funds can be used, and food assistance is not one of those. All of our budgeted food assistance money comes either from the Department of Agriculture through the Food and Nutrition Service, the SNAP program, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, and then we're also provided funds under the Older Americans Act, where we provide meals to senior citizens in the state. So maybe I misunderstood your question earlier today, but TANF funds cannot be redirected to food assistance. It's not permitted under federal law.
So if we allocate this money and we spend the 2.8 million, and you have approximately 20 million in that fund, the remaining amount that's in that fund would just be sitting on reserve for a disaster type of situation, and we would have no ability to spend that in the next calendar year or use that for any additional purpose other than TANF. Is that correct?
It is earmarked TANF money. We get a sub-grant, we get a block grant of $86.5 million each federal fiscal year for TANF. $30 million of that is committed each year to Child Protection Services, so a third of our money is already earmarked for CPS, and that leaves about $56.5 million that we use for direct assistance to families and for the sub-grants that we fund and for the supportive services that we provide under the TANF program.
Okay, well, I'll share with you and ask this question. For the other needs that we have, I've been speaking with another chairman who's in this room about trying to find a source for some of these needs for food and that kind of thing. And will you commit to me to work within your budget to help try to find somewhere there where we can make some allowances, not only to meet this TANF need, but also to try to find some needs for the food shortage. I received information today that we will once again be number 50 in the state in some of our, in food insecurity. I think we have approximately 22% of the state population who will be deemed as being food insecure this year. You know, and again, I do appreciate your work on this, you know, and I will be glad to support this increase. But I also need your help on helping us try to find some money to take care of the other need. And if we can't get it through this pot, I think we need to start looking as a committee and as a body in rearranging the pots so that we can make sure that all of the needs of our people are met. So will you pledge to work with me on that?
Yes, sir, I will. And in fact, we are already talking with the Food and Nutrition Service on the Emergency Food Assistance Program. In the last year, we were only given $1 million, well, $1.6 million for that. We have asked for additional funding. We just haven't been approved for it. And in the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, our federal funding was only $1 million last year. I will tell you also, you and I, when we talked earlier, you mentioned, and I agree with you, I am very committed to the issue of hunger in this state. And Mr. Galarno and I and our organizational ombudsman had a conference call a few days ago with a group called Share Our Strength, which is a nonprofit that is committed to they're committed to eradicating childhood hunger. Now that's a tall order, but I want to work right alongside them in eradicating as much childhood hunger in this state as we can. So you have my full commitment to do whatever we can to find additional funds to feed Mississippi's families. Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I do think you're off to a great start in your new position, you know, and look forward to working with you more on this.
Thank you very much.
Senator Horn.
One amendment, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Horn.
My amendment is to strike the lines, strike the words July 1st, 2021, and insert in lieu thereof passage on line 544.
Senator Horn moves to make the legislation effective from and after passage. Is there debate on the amendment? Are you ready to vote on the amendment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Now we have a motion, title sufficient, do pass, committee substitute. Is there debate? Ready to vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Now you have this other piece of legislation, Senate Bill 2762, which wishes to simplify something.
Right. Well, we're asking to go back to something that was simplified, that was complicated. Mr. Chairman, this bill, which is Senate Bill 2762, asks that the legislature amend part of what was enacted in 2017. It's known as the HOPE Act, or it's known as the HHS Transformation Bill. It had to do with eligibility functions of Medicaid and DHS, the SNAP and the TANF program. There was an unintended consequence from some amendments, though, to the statute. The statute that was enacted in 2017 mandated that the Department of Human Services go to what's called change reporting for purposes of our Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Without getting into a whole lot of detail, change reporting requires every family that receives SNAP benefits in the state to report to their caseworker within 10 days of the change any change. It can be an increase or it can be a decrease of $100 in their household income. Well, $100, as you well understand, could be a weekend of overtime, even at minimum wage. It could be $100. There could be a $100 change. If they don't report that, and there's a 10-day period within which to report that $100 change, we are obliged to recertify and to terminate their benefits if they don't report that $100 change. Change reporting has had a dramatic increase on, we're permitted an error rate of about 6% by the Department of Agriculture. None of us is perfect, so we're allowed a 6% error rate, meaning we can get 94% of our cases right, and we can get 6% of them where we make an error. If the error rate gets above 6%, then the Department of Agriculture begins looking at imposing penalties on us. And our error rate of late under change reporting is running at about 9.6%, I believe. Under the formula that the Department of Agriculture has determined that in 2 years, which will be next year, the end of this year will be the second year, if our error rate stays at 9.6%, we will incur a tremendous penalty on the order of a couple of $100 million at the maximum from change reporting. Now, the difference in change reporting, and let me say this, we are the only state in the nation that uses change reporting. No other state, no territory is currently using change reporting. And in fact, our federal oversight agency, the Food and Nutrition Service, has suggested to us, y'all ought to get out of change reporting if you can, because everybody who's tried it has found that it runs their error rate up. And Maine was the last state that tried it, and they abandoned it last year because they were looking at a 10% error rate, and they said we need to get away from it and get back to simplified reporting. Now, what's the difference? Simplified reporting is what we did for years and years. We took applications, we made the eligibility determination, and each SNAP case is recertified every 6 months. Every 6 months, anybody who is on the SNAP program, their case is recertified. We re-examine their household income. That's what every other state is doing. Now, if you wonder, what do we do? The HOPE Act was all about fraud and abuse in the Medicaid program and in our assistance programs, in TANF and SNAP. What do we do to catch fraud and abuse? Well, we have a very well-developed quality control function in our SNAP program. We pull a sample of a couple of hundred cases every month. We review, we validate every piece of paper in the file. everything regarding the household income, everything involving who lives in the household, every piece of paper that touches on the eligibility issue is validated for a sample of 200 cases every month. And as if that weren't enough, out of our sample of 200, then FNS comes behind us and they pull a sample of 50 cases out of our 200, then they revalidate our revalidation. So I think in regard to fraud, waste, and abuse in the SNAP program, and in addition to that, we have an Inspector General's office which also receives public tips and fraud tips from the public and from anybody within the agency, from a caseworker regarding suspected fraud. We have investigators who investigate those allegations of fraud. So we are doing our due diligence in regard to fraud, waste, and abuse, but we need to get out from under. And the only part of the HOPE Act that we're asking the legislature to change is the sentence in 431233, which says that the Department of Human Services right now says may not establish or use a simplified reporting system. And we're asking that you change that to may use a simplified reporting system. We're not touching anything else that the HOPE Act required us to do. We're still working on the fraud and abuse module piece of the HOPE Act. We're still working on, and we have created the common web portal that was a requirement of the HOPE Act, so that anybody who wants to apply for Medicaid benefits or SNAP benefits or TANF benefits can go to one website, the common web portal, and they can apply there. So we're following all of the other dictates of the HOPE Act, but we need to get out from under this change reporting, or we're going to be coming back to Mr. Hobson's committee saying we need a whole lot of money to pay a big penalty to the Department of Agriculture.
There's a motion titled sufficient do pass. Is there further debate? Questions? Are you ready to vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. That completes our agenda.
Thank you, sir.
I do not intend for this committee to meet tomorrow. Senator Horn.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Mr. Chairman?
I said, I do not intend for us to meet tomorrow. We met yesterday, we met today, but we'll not be getting together tomorrow.
I move rise and report.
A motion to rise and report. All in favor say aye. All opposed no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Thank you all very much.